Afghanistan is a land full of stories, struggles, and secrets. But one secret stands out. The CIA didn't just watch what happened there. It played a big role. They gave money and weapons, then later chased the same people they once helped. So what really happened? And why did it all go so wrong? Today, we ask the hard questions. Because this story still affects the world. Let's look at the truth behind the shadows. It's time to understand what really went on. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979. They wished to prop up a communist government. But the United States did not want this to happen. They did not want the Soviets to take up more land in Asia. So the US forged a secret plan to retaliate. That was done with the help of the CIA. It was the beginning of a long covert war. Then, the CIA initiated Operation Cyclone, one of the longest and most costly secret programs in history. Using it, the CIA delivered billions of dollars in aid and weapons. But they did not deliver them directly. They delivered them through Pakistan. The recipients of the weapons were referred to as the Mujahideen. They were Afghan insurgents who were battling the Soviet military. In time, many became influential warlords. In the meantime, the CIA cooperated with Pakistan's intelligence organization, the ISI. The US relied on Pakistan to decide which insurgent groups would receive US weapons and funds. Initially, this aided the US in its ability to maintain a low profile in the war. However, it also granted Pakistan significant authority. With time, the ISI began to support more radical factions. These decisions influenced Afghanistan's future in a threatening manner. As the war continued, the CIA assistance pressured the Soviets into withdrawal. In 1989, the Soviet troops withdrew. America counted it as a victory and lost interest shortly afterward. The damage was done, however. Once the Soviets withdrew, the Afghan factions turned on one another. Warlords occupied various areas. There was no stable government. Anarchy took its place. Unfortunately, this allowed more sinister forces to come into power. Later on, most of these groups turned against the US. Some became even terrorists. The US had inadvertently constructed the foundation for future dangers. In conclusion, the CIA's initial actions had dangerous consequences. Though they assisted in defeating the Soviets, they also assisted in unleashing decades of war. Following the Soviet pullout, Afghanistan plunged into deep chaos. With no stable government to govern the country, warlords began fighting one another to take control. People were weary of perpetual violence. Then came the Taliban. They promised order, security, and strict Islamic law. Many received them initially. The Taliban gained control swiftly and ruled by fear. Their justice was cruel and public. Nevertheless, many accepted their rule since they brought about temporary peace. Meanwhile, Osama bin Laden returned to Afghanistan. He used to fight with the Mujahideen and was a hero. Now, however, he had a purpose in life: to attack the West. He created al-Qaeda and used old network war connections to develop it. He was protected by the Taliban. The CIA once regarded him as their ally. Now he was getting ready to attack America. In the beginning, America did not know the danger. Bin Laden organized fighters and mapped out attacks while living in plain sight. The Taliban provided him with refuge. Al-Qaeda became increasingly powerful in the shadows. The CIA did not move swiftly enough. This partnership between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda eventually would cause a world tragedy. It had started as American backing in a Cold War turned into an incubator of extremism. Everything changed on September 11, 2001. 19 members of Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes. They launched a huge assault on US territory. 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. One was destroyed in the Pentagon. Another was brought down in a field after passengers fought back. More than 3,000 people were killed. It was the most fatal terrorist attack in US history. The US acted quickly. They named Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda as being behind it. President George W. Bush ordered the Taliban to turn him over, but they did not. So within weeks, the US started Operation Enduring Freedom. Their aim was to eliminate al-Qaeda and oust the Taliban from office. The CIA and US Special Forces fought alongside Afghan warriors. Together, they soon drove the Taliban out. But the triumph was short-lived. At Tora Bora, bin Laden fled to Pakistan. US troops relied on local fighters to apprehend him, but they did not succeed. This was a monumental error. The conflict dragged on and became more difficult. Al-Qaeda commanders went underground. The Taliban started rebuilding. What began as a quick campaign became a 20-year conflict, and the CIA's mission continued to expand. As the conflict in Afghanistan continued, the CIA increasingly took part in covert operations. These were covert. Among the most controversial was the utilization of black sites. These were covert prisons established in other nations. The CIA detained inmates there without trial. Most accounts report that abusive tactics were employed. These were enhanced interrogation techniques, which most refer to as torture. Some of the prisoners were innocent, but were held for years anyway. Others were never released or charged. At these secret detention facilities, individuals were subjected to isolation, beatings, and intense pressure. The CIA explained that these techniques assisted in the collection of crucial information, but human rights advocates strongly disagreed. They claimed that torture violated international law and damaged America's reputation. Meanwhile, the CIA cooperated with Afghan strike forces in the region. These were small, clandestine units that were trained to conduct rapid missions. An example is the Coast Protection Force, KPF. They were headquartered in eastern Afghanistan and had close relations with the CIA. They conducted numerous night raids. These operations were designed to capture or kill Taliban militants, but most of these raids went awry. Accounts from families and human rights organizations indicate that innocent civilians were killed. In certain instances, entire families were targeted. Villagers described doors being shattered at midnight. People were arrested arbitrarily. Others were shot dead on the spot. Most families were never informed why their homes had been raided. Due to these activities, the locals lost trust in U.S. forces. Locals feared both the Taliban and the foreign military. The KPF was operating with minimal supervision. Even Afghan officials claimed they couldn't contain them. Yet the CIA used them heavily. In the long run, these activities induced more ire than security. Thus, although these clandestine activities were intended to combat terror, they had severe repercussions. They erased the boundary between protection and misuse. They also questioned the extent to which a nation could go in the name of protection. Afghanistan has been one of the world's largest opium producers for a long time. Poppy plants produce the drug, which is used to produce heroin. Poppy cultivation expanded even more when there was no U.S. war in Afghanistan. The CIA did not actively promote the drug trade directly, but some of its activities contributed to its spread. Initially, preventing drugs was not the primary focus. Terrorism fighting came first. Most Afghan warlords, who assisted the CIA, also had something to do with the trade of opium. These individuals were regarded as useful allies in the war. The CIA provided them with cash and protection. In turn, they opposed the Taliban. But this assistance provided them with power and freedom. With that freedom, they established drug empires, so money from drugs kept coming. Other accounts indicate that those warlords were spending CIA money to expand their drug trade. The US turned a blind eye because it too needed to have some assistance on the ground. But that choice had huge side effects. The drug trade helped fund additional weapons, combatants, and local corruption. Taliban fighters also detained and taxed poppy fields and used the proceeds to continue fighting. So the drug money helped both sides of the conflict. Through time, this created a cycle of violence. Farmers cultivated poppies to make a living. Warlords defended them. Taliban taxed them. And some US-supported groups pretended not to notice. Even with billions spent to prevent drugs, opium production never actually decreased. In fact, in certain years, it reached record highs. The global impact was serious. Heroin made from Afghan opium reached Europe, Russia, and beyond. Addiction rates rose. Overdoses increased. Whole communities were affected far from the battlefield. Critics say the US never had a clear plan to stop the drug flow. Instead, short-term goals took priority. In conclusion, the CIA's implicit involvement in the drug trade fueled the flames. By opting for warlords instead of a sustained peace, they contributed to an international epidemic. In 2021, the US withdrew its troops from Afghanistan. The withdrawal was rapid and chaotic. In a matter of days, the Taliban reasserted control. The Afghan army melted away. Panic ensued. Many attempted to leave the country. Airports were mobbed, and people were desperate to get out. It was a stunning conclusion to a 20-year conflict. The CIA had been in Afghanistan for decades. It trained combatants, conducted secret missions, and collected intelligence. Much of it, however, dissolved quickly. The Taliban's resurgence highlighted fundamental flaws in U.S. strategy. People wondered, was it all worth it? Today, Afghanistan is uncertain once again. Girls are prohibited from going to school. Fear has come back. In retrospect, the CIA's role is contested. Some claim it battled terror. Others claim it created long-term issues. This is more than history. It's a warning. Covert operations don't remain covert forever. They result in broken homes, lost lives, and profound scars. Every mission, every raid, every transaction that is made behind the scenes comes at a price. That price is usually paid by innocent civilians who had nothing to do with the struggle. The CIA's conflict in Afghanistan wasn't all about politics or authority. It determined a nation's destiny. It transformed the way the world perceives America. It demonstrated what occurs when short-term victories mean more than long-term peace. Children grew up in war. Fathers were lost by families. Entire villages were uprooted. And today, after all the years of fighting, the Taliban are back in power. Was it worth it? That's still the question that plagues policymakers, soldiers, and the Afghan people. Ultimately, all secret wars become public wounds. The truth is revealed. And when it is, it makes us confront the pain that was left behind. It reminds us, what's done in the dark can shape the world for generations.